Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This is the continuation of Keep Your Friends Close, As for Your Enemies. This will be Part 6, Chapter 6, entitled Act 6. 17 days until deadline, 12:34 p.m., 33 degrees Celsius. Izuku knocked on the door to the support course lab. Knowing the person he was there to see, she'd be working through the lunch break. The door opened and a little bit of smoke poured out, and the soot-smudged face of Mei Hatsume peeked out through the crack in the door. "Midoriya, I thought you were seeing me this afternoon." Izuku scratched the back of his neck. "Actually, I will drop by in last period today, but there are some details that I need to share with you first. It's about the recruits." Hatsume shifted her weight over to her right leg, thinking for a moment. "Okay, come on in, just be careful. There shouldn't be too much carbon monoxide in the air, and the vents should take care of it soon, but if you start hallucinating, let me know." Izuku nodded, following her inside. Hatsume sat down, and he followed suit. "Okay, what are you here to tell me?" "The recruits from my team aren't recruits. They're not even on the villain team. They're spies, sent from the hero team, and we need to be careful with how we deal with this." Hatsume blinked, then let out a short laugh. You're serious?" Izuku nodded. "Deadly." Hatsume went quiet. What are we going to do?" "I'm not sure, but I think we should play along. I think their plan is to make us complacent, so we don't try any large-scale attacks. You saw at the sports festival what I'm willing to do if I get desperate for something. They're trying to stop me from doing something. Something like that." "So why not just reveal what you know at the start, and then do something like that?" "Because of the exact same reason. They don't want me to get desperate and mess things up, sure, but if it came to a head-on fight, we would lose. They're playing to win, in the cleanest way possible, rather than risking a messy fight that could cause a lot of damage." Izuku closed his eyes, leaning back. "But what they don't realize is that they've turned this into the exact kind of war I can win. Complicated plans, analysis, psychological warfare. That's my kind of fight. They've given us an edge, and I'm not going to waste it. And with showcasing my babies, I want to win this with you, yes, but I still have to do this." "You're going to have to make a lot of traps." Izuku grinned, heaviness dripping away to reveal a layer of resigned, cruel determination. "And, from my memory, Shinso's quirk doesn't work through digital sound waves. Think you could rig something up to take advantage of that?" Hatsume grinned. "I sure could, 10 million. 1 day until deadline. 6:01 p.m. 0 degrees Celsius. Shota stared at the screen in front of him in shock. That was Midoriya. Was that Midoriya? No, it couldn't be. But it had to be. If it wasn't Midoriya, it was Toga, and Toga couldn't keep someone else's form for that long. Was there some kind of possession quirk at play? Had someone straight up replaced his student with a clone? Because there was no way. But deep down, Shota knew that that wasn't it. That was Midoriya, possibly more Midoriya than anyone had seen in him in a long time. There had been flashes before, of course, at the sports festival, at the USJ, etc., but Shota had known that there was something in there. Beneath all the smiles and sunshine and rainbows, there had always been a gritty, self-deprecating, self-sacrificing analyst with ruthless conviction and a manipulative streak a mile wide, hiding just out of sight. Shota knew what fronts looked like, and he knew that Midoriya had one, just not exactly what the front was hiding. It wasn't a bad thing. This was progress. Midoriya was shedding his skin, getting ready to grow, and now that Shota knew what to look out for, he knew how to help. But, at the same time, it was because Midoriya had been hurt when it came out, and the lengths he seemed to be willing to go to, that complete switch in his personality, spoke to years of repression. Shota wasn't an idiot. He knew they were pushing Midoriya past his limits here, but he'd miscalculated just what was beyond them. If Midoriya had been pushing this down for a long time, things were going to get ugly very soon. Shota glanced at All Might, who was staring at the screen with bulging eyes and blood on his lips, sheet pale. He sighed. All Might had never seen past the front. This was probably even more of a shock to him than it was to Shota. A part of Shota was vindictively happy about that. "You miscalculated, you big-headed prick. You never saw this kid for who he was, and probably unconsciously encouraged him to repress his issues, and now you shall suffer." "Hold the fuck up." Shota looked up in surprise. Hizashi never swore when he was at work. "So that's what he wanted to do with the makeup?" Shota turned his attention back to the screen, unaware that his attention had wandered off in the first place to see him rambling about something. Identity theft, whilst applying makeup. His eyes widened. Nezu started laughing. He wanted to subtly suggest to the villains that they needed to think in creative ways to win. Midori put a spare voice changer on, one exactly like Shinso's, and turned around to face Shinso, and the cameras. Everyone in the staff room collectively died. Shota was pretty sure Yagi was choking to death on his own blood by this point. Midoriya had stolen Shinso's identity. The hero team was scattered around, waiting for their win to be announced. They were vulnerable. Shota grinned. The sounds of swearing, chaos, and a few painful-sounding crashes came from behind him as his colleagues struggled to come to terms with the situation. Everyone, thanks to the cameras, already knew all the countermeasures Midoriya and Hatsume had set up and organized. They knew that the villains had already won, though how was a much more complicated explanation. But they had expected one last frontal attack, one last big middle finger to the hero team, fueled with the typical Midoriya desperation. This was not a frontal attack. The hero team wouldn't even know that they were losing until their last member was on the ground. 17 days until deadline. 9:39 a.m., 33 degrees Celsius. Hitoshi didn't exactly like the idea of working with Bakugo, but there was not much else he could do. He wanted to create a respectful bond with the rest of the class, and being on the hero team was the best way to do it. More people on his side, less association with villains, etc. It was with this thought process that he approached Bakugo as soon as the assembly was over. "What do you want, eyebags?" "I need to prove myself to this class. I need to join the hero team in order to do that." Bakugo paused. Something happening inside his head. He looked at Hitoshi out of the corner of his eye. "What if I gave you, along with some of the others, a mission?" This should have been the point at which Hitoshi used his brain and said, "Yeah, no thanks," but he was desperate. He needed this. "I'd do it." Bakugo nodded. 6 arms, punk wannabe, emo wannabe, invisibitch, Miss Maker. Hitoshi raised an eyebrow as Shoji, Jiro, Tokiyami, Hagakure, and Yaoyorozu came over. Seems like he's not the only one with a bad nickname. "I have an idea." The others nodded, waiting for an explanation. "Deku gets fucking crazy when he's desperate. You all know this." Hitoshi nodded, an image of Midoriya glaring at him with a broken finger, springing unbidden to his mind. "We need to de-escalate things before they get to that point. That's why you 6 are going to become all buddy-buddy with him and pretend to be on his team." Hold up. Bakugo wanted him for an espionage mission? The others were concerned, too, if their murmurs were anything to go by. "Isn't that a bit cruel?" Yaoyorozu wondered. "And why us?" Bakugo huffed, rolling his eyes. "Punk wannabe and invisibitch are good at being sneaky. Miss Maker's good at being smart, and can wrangle everyone together if anything goes wrong. 6 arms isn't known well enough to Deku to make him suspicious. Same with emo wannabe and eyebags." Bakugo looked at Hitoshi with an unusually pensive expression, or at least as pensive as Bakugo could be. "Deku has a soft spot for you. Your little speech at the sports festival got to him, and he sees you as a good rival or whatever." Hitoshi didn't know how to respond to that. Bakugo scowled, returning to normal. "But isn't that still a bit cruel?" Bakugo snorted. "It's only for 2 weeks. We'll be able to take him down as soon as the exam starts anyway. You just have to make him more full of himself than he already is." If Hitoshi was to describe Midori as anything, full of himself would not be his words of choice. Still, the group found themselves agreeing. Not a single person in the group actually wanted to do it, but there was a kind of strength in numbers that gave them the illusion of freedom from their own morals. Imagined peer pressure got to them. "All right, what do we do?" 4 days until deadline. 11:32 p.m., 14 degrees Celsius. Izuku carefully placed the smoke detector back in its original place, sure that the bug he placed wouldn't be noticeable enough to warrant suspicion. He'd placed as many bugs in the fake city as he could, and had put so many wires in all the phones that if anyone wanted to have any kind of conversation, Izuku would hear. Hatsume was completing the long, arduous process of hacking into all the Wi-Fi networks in the city and feeding all the information they had back into one main computer system, a process that Izuku was glad he didn't have to complete, since Hatsume was the better hacker out of the two of them. Now, with the whole city bugged and wired up, Izuku would know everything that the heroes did. Was this somewhat excessive? Yes. Did Izuku care? No. He was Jared 19, and he never learned how to read the signs of potential insanity. Just how to repress his issues until they all exploded at once. Honestly, this whole exercise had brought out his long-hidden paranoid side, but Izuku guessed that was somewhat justified. Something to do with having a bunch of people specifically sent out to betray him set him on edge. Sue him. Thanks to Hatsume, all his team members, communication sets were rigged to relay information about everything they said, not just over the radio, but supposedly off the record too, back to Izuku. Their villain costumes have been laced with multiple covert trackers stitched into the lining of their fabric, which, you guessed it, also relayed everything back to Izuku. But how exactly do they do this, you may ask? What system do they relay everything back to? If the villain base is infested with hero spies, it's not like they'd just not notice a giant security system tapped into every part of the city. They're traitors, not idiots. Izuku bit back the bitterness he felt at that. In the chaos of everything, it was easy to forget one of their main objectives, secure a villain base that is not infiltrated by the heroes, but they managed to remember. Q, the secret villain base, in the sewers below the city. Izuku carefully slid the manhole cover away before slipping down into the tunnels, thankful the fake city didn't have any real sewage to actually pump, not yet at least, and there still wouldn't be much even after the heroes had moved in. The base was about a 2-minute walk from the fake base, close enough for easy access while staying far enough away for a decent diversion. By the time he reached the base, Hatsume had finished plugging into all the different input signals. The base was dark, with wires twisting around the space like demented vines, leading into one central screen. The faint whirring of computer workings, hidden from Jiro's quirk by the soundproofing that lined the walls, filled the room with the sound of static as the systems calibrated. Small LED lights, red, green, blue, blinked like small, glowing eyes from various positions around the room, signaling that their respective systems were on and functioning. Headphones sat in rows, their twisting wires connected to their respective input signals, ready to be put on and switched around. Izuku smiled bitterly. A real villain's base. All at once, various monitors tuned to the proper signals, flickering to life. They showed low-quality images of storefronts, intersections, back alleys, offices. Everything in the city was laid bare before Izuku, and a strange rush of adrenaline rose inside of him. Izuku grinned. He could see. Hatsume cackled behind him, and Izuku joined in. "This is brilliant!" "It is." Izuku shifted his weight to his right foot, watching as a bat swooped in front of one of the cameras further to the right. "It really is." 1 day until deadline. 6:02 p.m. 0 degrees Celsius. Izuku crouched on a rooftop, a few blocks away from the fake villain base. Reaching up with gloved fingers, it was way too cold to have to do without gloves. He had shifted his voice changer on his face to Shinso's configuration. It had taken some time to figure out which setting fit Hitoshi's voice, low and soft and not quite full, but he'd managed eventually. With the same hand, he reached up to the comms. "Code word dastardly. Siren here. Midoriya relocated to another building, 2 blocks east from the base. I don't think he knows, but he suspects something's wrong." "Call for reinforcements?" "I think we should surround the building, yes." "On it. Attack squad, take the entrance. Defense squad, take the back. Long-range fighters, stay long-range. I'm not taking any chances here." Bakugo paused. "Does anyone know the location of Team Dastardly?" Izuku resisted the urge to curse. "They were all sent out on a mission by Midoriya to blow up a building. They said over the villain comms that they were en route back." A pause. "Bakugo?" It felt weird calling Kachan Bakugo, but it would reassure him somewhat. "Right. Fucking good. Everyone's en route to the building." The line clicked off. Izuku spotted a dark figure making their way over to the rooftops, Kaminari and Ashido, by the looks of it. He made his way over to them. Kaminari spotted him first, to his surprise. He slowed his gait to match Shinso's. Curse his short legs, as Kaminari had waved him over. "Siren! The building's over there, right?" Izuku nodded. "I spotted another exit to the building in the northern alleyway. Follow me." Ashido and Kaminari followed as he had dropped down to the street. After a quick glance around, he confirmed no one was around to see them. Then he turned and, without hesitation, shot them both in the chest with the paintball gun. Kaminari froze as Ashido had struggled to not cry out in surprise. He looked at Izuku with such betrayal that Izuku felt sick. Shinso had already betrayed 2 people today, Hatsume and him, and he wasn't having anyone else feel that. Izuku reached up, removing his glove, and used his middle finger to remove the contact in his left eye, effectively flipping them both off. "Don't worry, Kaminari. You haven't been betrayed." Izuku decided to just leave it at that, putting the contact back in, turning on his heel and stalking away. Aoyama was next, shot in the stomach. Ida made for quick work, and he got Sato and Ojiro in the back. Sero, Asui, and Todoroki were as easy as breathing. He made sure Uraraka knew that it was him after he got her. Koda surprisingly provided a small amount of a challenge. While Koda didn't know who Izuku was, his animals did, but Izuku was still quick to splatter him in bright purple paint. By telling them all to surround a building, he had effectively separated them into tiny groups. Their threat was minimal. They didn't know what they were facing. It made everything so disgustingly easy. In a matter of minutes, there was only Bakugo and Kirishima left. They were together, like the happy little pair they were, atop the building opposite the front entrance to Izuku's supposed hiding place. As Izuku approached, Bakugo looked around. Scared? No. Annoyed. Where are all the goddamn extras? They should be here by now. I agree. They are taking their time. The pair's heads whipped around to face Izuku. Siren, have you seen any others? Without bothering to look in Kirishima's direction, he raised his gun and shot him in the chest. Kirishima jerked, surprised, as Bakugo prepared to attack Izuku. Izuku just pointed the gun at Bakugo, voice calm and level. Try and I'll shoot. What are you doing? Bakugo growled but stayed still. You're on the villain team. Oh. Izuku's tone took on a mocking quality, his head cocking to the side. Don't like being betrayed, do you? You're dead, Extra. I trusted you with a simple-ass mission. Simple? Izuku switched the configuration of the voice changer back to neutral, letting his real voice shine through, although Bakugo would assume it was fake. He heightened his voice a little for dramatic effect, letting his eyes go wide and round. Was it easy, Kacchan? To trick me? To fuck around in my head? To turn everyone I trusted against me? Bakugo opened his mouth to yell, but remembered Shinso's quirk at the last minute, slamming his jaw shut with a click. Izuku smirked and continued. It was your idea, right? To hurt me? To manipulate me? To gather a little team of people who you knew I would want to trust? People I was bound to feel close to, even when they were pointing guns at my head? Izuku smiled sweetly. You always knew me so well, Kacchan. Knew I'd... Shut the hell up! Bakugo froze as he realized that he'd just spoken aloud, before grinning when he realized he hadn't been brainwashed. What? Having difficulty with your quirk? Izuku was tired of this. No, he shot Bakugo. My quirk's just fine. Izuku tugged his hood down, letting the wind ruffle his curls. It was starting to snow, sleet flecking at his forehead and eyes. Bakugo's eyes widened as Izuku Midoriya walked away. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 6 of Keep Your Friends Close, As for Your Enemies. Chapter 7, the final chapter, will be next. Hope you all are still enjoying. Let me know your thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.